So let's start off with the fact that we're not perfect. We suck at self-care. At least we're better than the USA at it, but at least according to international rankings. But I want to rant about occupation, and I want to speak about occupational actualization from the context of cultural genocide and reconciliation. The reality is, have you ever stopped to actually think about how arbitrary your daily life is? You wake up, you eat, you work, you repeat. You're no hunt. You don't live. You're not really mating. Every action you take in a day, from the meals you're eating to the recipes that's involved, and that's all different from what someone 100,000 million years ago do. And the different priorities and beliefs are shaped by your occupational culture. And it pisses me off how unlucky I am to be born in a system where fulfillment is tied to success instead of simpler joys, like finding a meal or keeping my room clean. I'm in a system where if I don't have a nice house, I'm not doing well. And it's somehow considered bad, and I'm competing against everyone else for these resources. And belief systems are intangible, but they're powerful. And it shape how I smile, how I cry, and how I die. And what I consider a problem. And what we have, no matter where you live in the world, you're forced into an occupational belief system. And we can all agree that it would be really fun to live in a farm in Appalachia, believe in ghosts in the woods, and think the moon gives us luck. And it's its own unique way of playing life. And we live what we perceive from interpret from a value system. It's just as real as any other system, and it's how you interpret the world. And when you look at something like Japan, where they have a term called karoshi and karajitsu, which means working yourself to death and and suicide from overwork, respectively, when you also then compare that against how 1% of Danish employees work more than 50 hours a week, and they also devote 15.7 hours a day personal time and leisure, you see that some work cultures and some occupational cultures are way better than others for self-care. And let's look at the First Nations before residential schools. They were in harmony with the land, they had community roles, spiritual practices that were tied to the environment. The TRC explains that these were tools of cultural genocide. The schools forcefully removed children, banned their languages, and replaced traditional knowledge of European labor systems. The TRC final verdict considered that it stripped away the roles that gave their lives meaning. And that's horrible. Obviously, the result, generational trauma. These schools cause cycles of substance abuse, depression, dismantled community structures. Children returned home and could connect with their families and cultures, and were isolated in a system that denied their worth. The TRC linked this directly to Canada's ongoing Indigenous mental health crisis. And what pisses me off is this was as recent as 1996. Not just Canada, and the fall of Greek gods in favor of Christianity, or as New Light mentions, colonialism replacing Egypt's ancient gods with Islam. These indigenous spiritual practices and occupational system that made sense for local environments and local people are being replaced by one-size-fits-all cultures and systems that prioritize profit over purpose and don't account for the beliefs and ways of the land or the people. And the forced integration led to homelessness, mental health crisis, community breakdowns, and it's no wonder that the Homeless Hub Canada mentions how a 2021 census found that 35% of homeless individuals identified as Indigenous. Reconciliation isn't about guilt. It's about restoration. The TRC's 94 calls to action demand that Canada rebuild the Indigenous occupational systems and revive their languages, their land-based education, their self-governance. Why? Because happiness isn't universal. For some, it's a clean home or a shared meal, but for others, it's stewardship of their land. And this genocide robs people of that choice. So why, ask yourself, why do we accept a system where fulfillment is based on wealth? And why do we let arbitrary beliefs dictate who thrives? Cultural genocide doesn't just kill people, it kills occupational worlds. And this was just in the past. We need to focus on more recent times. The reality is workers killed themselves. Between 1991 and 2001, roughly 2.3K working men and women committed suicide. And this, in Canada, and that alludes roughly to the idea that there's some sort of occupational imbalance related to these deaths, and how our workforce potentially could have less of these overwork, less of this culture of occupational misalignment if we changed how our occupational culture worked. And I would love to say that this has ended and we stopped doing cultural genocide and we have all these alternate cultures, but we stopped. We're still losing them. Look at the Uyghur population in China. As BBC reported, they're currently being forcefully sent to re-education camps to be assimilated culturally, learn new languages, and learn new labor and new educations. In this case, significantly brutal and deadly force is used. And let me remind you, yeah, this is exactly what happened with residential schools. And we know this is wrong. We know people are getting killed, and we know they are getting raped, and we've seen this all before. Even though if the weaker survive, this will destroy their cultural, linguistic, and traditional knowledge. For the sake of better occupational and kinder future for all of us, I urge you to reconsider the brands that you support and the products you buy. Traditional belief systems are a rare resource in our modern world, and we must try our best to keep these traditions and the people alive. When the people behind a culture are broken, it's really hard to pick up the pieces, and that task gets more and more difficult by the day. We can value by substituting these ancient systems into our own lifestyles to make up for gaps of our current system and learn from more simpler and more fulfilling lives. And yet these systems die off by the day. And it is our obligation to keep these people and their systems alive for our own welfare and for theirs. Thank you for listening.